Beach, I was in South Beach. So.
Thank you.
I think Jervin can speak to that. Thanks for my parliamentary colleague, Marcus Road, for the invite. I have done a few of these with reference to national insurance, which is a topical debate that has been banded about in the country. I think I'm in about every PLP chat group that there is. And what gets disheartening is that when even among our supporters, we are spewing the same nonsense that is coming from the other side. And whenever I talk on this topic, I like to lay it out and just keep it simple. And we start with numbers. In 1981, the contribution for the National Insurance Board was $24.1 million. In 1990, it was $66.4 million. In 2000, the income from contributions was $114.1 million. In 2010, it was $167.5 million. In 2011, it was $190.5 million. 2012, income from contributions was $203 million. 2014, the income was $244.5 million. In 2016, the income was $261 million. 2018, the income from national insurance from contributions was $283.9 million. 2020, $225 million. 2021, $257 million. And 2022, the income was $290 million. And for any organization, that would seem to be a robust amount of income, and people will say that we are in a good position, and so if we say that the fund will be depleted in the next 4 years, the average person will say, why? Let's contrast that. In 1981, the benefits expenditure was $8.3 million on income of $24.1 million. In 1990, the benefits paid out was $33.7 million. In 2000, the income paid out, expenditure for benefits was $88.7 million. 2010, benefits were $175.9 million. In 2011, $188.8 million. In 2012, $199 million, this benefits expenditure. In 2014, $244.1 million. In 2016, it was $275.1 million. 2018, $291.8 million. 2020, the National Insurance Board paid out $405.9 million. In 2021, $327.5 million. 2022, the National Insurance Board paid out $353 million. The highest number I called was 2022, in terms of income.
2021.
At $290 million. This year, the National Insurance Board is projected to take in $300 million plus. We are also projected to pay out $355 million. Now, before I go elsewhere, let's just keep it simple. And everybody is saying we don't need to collect all of the funds that are outstanding, investments. Everybody have this solution. Now, from 2000, there have been actuarial reports on national insurance. And what was said in 2000 is, if you do not deal with what is going on, the fund will be depleted. The 10th actuarial report said the fund will be depleted by 2029. The 11th actuarial report says that we will be depleted by 2028. You notice how the numbers are coming down? And those figures I gave you from the 11th actuarial report was between the year 2018. That's 5 years ago. And did not take into account national insurance paid out from 2021 on. In that was the 405 million. National insurance is projected to lose almost $100 million this year. On the benefits contribution side alone, it's $86 million that we're going to be in deficit. And if I was to go around the room and say the reason why the fund is in this position, most people will come up with answers that would be totally wrong. Because some of the reason why the National Insurance Fund is in the position that it's in now is factors that are good. How much of us in here would want to sacrifice our parents or our grandparents? None. Well, part of the reason is our pensioners are living longer. Who do you blame for that? Who do you blame for the fact that one time ago in 1990, there was 13,524 pensioners at National Insurance? Today, there's 44,200. That's an increase of 30,000 more pensioners that are collecting from the fund. Next year will make the board 50 years, and yet there has been one rate increase in 2010. 50 years. When national insurance started, there was no such thing as unemployment benefits. When national insurance started, there was no such thing as industrial benefits. And so, somebody who works at Bama or Atlantis, who falls down on their job on day one and break their leg, our national insurance is obligated to pay them for an incident that have nothing to do with the government, never mind national insurance. But these are the times we're living in. And for those who are saying that we are paying 3.9% now, and the projected raise as of June next year, July 1st next year, those who are on minimum wage, the projected increase will be $1.95 per week. For those who are on the high end of the scale, the projected increase for them will be $5.55. So if you're making $7.60 July 1st next year, you'll be looking at paying $5.55. Now, I'm not being cynical, I'm not being insensitive to people who are going through tough times. But those employees of national insurance would know the government can't bail out the national insurance fund by law. That's the reality. So national insurance will make its monies off contributions and investments. So it ain't going to be going into the treasury. And even if national insurance was going into the treasury, that money have to come from somewhere. And what has happened for the past 20 plus years, we all knew that, speaking in SC and AF language, the elastic was scratching. and eventually the bird got the base. And that is being deliberate in my speaking. I have a relatively good command of the English language. But we have come to a point where we could do all of the right things in terms of if we collect every penny that's owing from government corporations to national insurance, that is up to last month around $8 million. If we collect all the rent that is outstanding from all the government agencies, that is $30 million. So for $38 million, everybody would have paid in. Now tell me, that don't even save you this year. Because if you lose close to 100 to 38, you're still 62 in the hole with nothing else coming in. That is our reality. In terms of benefits and other positives of the National Insurance Board, imagine during COVID if there was no national insurance. Imagine that. Imagine what this country would have been, because a lot of countries, including first world countries, did not have that safety net for us to fall on. So let's not treat national insurance as an afterthought. It is for a lot of people over 65, is the only source of income that they are going to get. And to show you in terms of reserves, the reserves of national insurance peaked at $1.75 billion. That would be around 2016. Today, the fund is around 1.4 billion. And if you're taking 100 million off of 2023, we see just where this conversation going. And so, I say these things because, Sonia, you late again? Pastel ain't that far. I say that for those that thought we should let them know. I'm just reaching them. And so, as PLPs, sometimes, like I said, it's disheartening to hear this narrative that other people is, oh, it's about waste management, wasted on what they call the executives or overhead expenditure. Well, unlike Barbados or Jamaica, that is one island. The Bahamas is an archipelago. There are 16 islands that have national insurance on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you have an office, you have to have staff. You have to rent a building, you have to buy cars, you have to buy computers, you have to buy ink. So these things are replicated over and over and over again. And just for those, look at Eleuthera. And this is the example I use. There are 5 offices in Eleuthera. And the average person is going to say, well, that's too much. But Eleuthera also includes Harbor Island and Spanish Wells. Look at what those 2 islands are generating. Those 2 islands generate more income than a lot of the bigger islands to them, should they not have a national insurance office.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go into the mainland, of which you talk about an island, 100 plus miles long. You have in the north, North Eleuthera. You have one in Governor's Harbor for that central part of the island. And then you have Roxal, which is going to be servicing straight on down to Bannerman Town. And all of us know the increase in Jack's Bay and all of those other agencies. Imagine where you're paying $7, $8 for a gallon of gas if you just put a national insurance agency in the middle of the US. And it's just totally impractical. But you look at it on paper and you say, well, why do that for Eleuthera? The reality is every one of those sub-offices justify itself. Now let's go down to the southern islands. You have Megwana, the island I came from, Crooked Island, with about 300 people. Inago with just over 1,500. Should my grandmother, Cripple, have to wait for national insurance rep who is servicing Uplands or servicing Long Key or servicing in Megwana? The one thing that we could be proud of as PLPs, when Sir Lyndon and those from that great generation brought on national insurance and brought in all of our amenities, their position was this, that those people who live in the southern Bahamas should have the same type of service as those in New Providence. Notice that we are putting passport office in Bimini, passport office in Abaco. For those in Nassau who have it, that we take it for granted. Imagine being on fixed income and just have to spend $200+ just to come to Nassau to pick up a passport. You're already dealing with depressed incomes. And so when people talk about the administrative costs, don't just look at the figure. Look at what the figure represents. It ain't just those who sitting up in the office in headquarters. Each one of those offices have to have at least a certain level of in terms of management, because Joe public who walk in there and is not satisfied with what is being told by the person in the office want to see the boss, or want to see somebody who have some managerial skills, who could speak on behalf of headquarters in Nassau. And so I try to tell people, look at the big picture. Look at what national insurance is as an entity. And the position of the Progressive Liberal Party has always been, we can fix it. That was our line. National insurance is our baby, and we have to be the ones to fix it. Now it comes at a cost, and no tax that you're going to put on somebody going to say, oh, you should take it with a smile. But yet again, if you were to tell me that to start the process of saving the National Insurance Fund was going to cost somebody on minimum wage less than $2, I think for the most part they would say, yeah, that's a pinch, but that's something that I'm prepared to sacrifice for the overall survival of the fund. Because again, when National Insurance started out, it was capped at $400 a week. You now have insurable wages of $760, and by law that will increase every 2 years. Right? National Insurance is taking in $23 million a month, and that sounds good. But if it's paying out $27 million every month, it's compounded. It ain't no go to the consolidated fund to bail you out. And as I said, the government position was, and so this to dispel that argument was, if we're gonna ask the public to spend more, N.I.B have to clean up its house when it comes to government agencies. And if I was, you go there and tell the average public, they believe this figure is in the billions, that there were basically 2 agencies that were standard who carried the lion's share of the bill. One of them came under me, which was NS, and the other one came under my wife, which is EAIC. And so I started with my cabinet colleagues and said, look, there is no way I could be the minister responsible and BAIC have this big debt, because you know what they're gonna spend it. They ain't gonna say that. They're gonna say, I given my wife agency all of this favor while everybody else is paying. They're never gonna call her. They can say, Minister Laroda wife, her company is one of the biggest breaches of the National Insurance Fund. And so we are trying to do a lot of things. Compliance. Get those people to pay. And do not believe the greatest offenders are the big companies. They are not. The biggest perpetrators of not paying national insurance are either private individuals or very small companies. And I get the list after every board meeting. You could be being sued from anywhere $280 to $800. There is no 10,000, 15,000 that are being prosecuted. A lot of them may stretch into the thousands, but mainly hundreds. So don't think that these big companies out there are not paying. Atlantis and Bama is 2 companies in terms of paying their light bill and paying their water bill and paying national insurance, and back as you know, the BPL. They're very compliant. But when you don't know the facts, we listen to the nonsense that out there. Now, in terms of the services that are provided, I think there's close to about 20 odd clinics that have been funded by the National Insurance Board, of which the government used that as investments, and other agencies like the Ministry of Health, they are there with the running of those. And that was because